Good evening, everyone. Welcome, everyone, to the fifth session of Pref Simplified, organized by the Electrical Engineer Society, IIEST Shibpur. Now, in today's session, we'll be focusing our discussion around MBA preparation. And to guide us through the process, we have our esteemed alumni and MBA graduates from the top B schools of India, Aryaman Negi from IIM Kozhikode and Himanshu Sekhar Mishra from XLRI Jamshedpur. Welcome both of you all to the session. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Shamila, for the introduction.
Thanks.
And so in today's process, we'll be addressing the questions through a discussion. Like I'll be presenting to you the questions, and we can have a discussion from taking your views, both of your views, one by one. So, without any delay, let us go on with the questions. So the first question that I would like to ask you is as a student pursuing engineering, what motivation did you all have to pursue like take up business studies as a higher education?
Himanshu, you will go in first, then I'll follow.
Sure. I think for me, the preparation for MBA, started right when I was in my engineering college. Right after my second year, after I explored a couple of verticals, particularly in electrical domain, I realized that this is not something probably I would like to continue for the rest of my life. And that's when I decided I would, pursue my career in my management studies. And again, PwC happened to be one of the first companies which came to the campus in the final year, and so I decided that I'd probably go for consulting first for a couple of years and then go for MBA. When it comes to the motivation, I think I always had an interest in the management domain, and
Right.
in the college itself, I was quite involved in various student management activities and other verticals. So that is exactly where the motivation came from. So, right from the college itself, I had started taking part in many curricular, co-curricular activities, which had helped me to get a knack about what would probably be required in the management domain. So that is from my end. I remember you can go about it.
Yeah, so pretty much on the similar lines, I believe I have a very similar story. But the thing is that I had always had this knack of getting into MBA. I think it started even before coming into the college. So I have always, and that is what I'm going to talk about today as well, as to how I profiled myself, how I shaped my profile. Uh, I think I was a very decent student when it comes to electrical engineering, but that interest or like, that that you call it the insect of pursuing an engineering career wasn't always there with me. So as a normal student, you decide and venture out into different fields, right? And I believe that MBA was something that really intrigued me. And what actually intrigued me was the entrance examination thing. Although it is a very Indianized process, but the examination of CAT is something which I had always been interested in because of the kind of questions that they throw at you. So it is actually the CAT exam that that started my inquisitiveness towards the MBA field. Then I met some really great batchmates and very eventful seniors, one of who has joined us amongst the panelists. And when you meet such people with similar thought processes, you get to know that probably you're on the right field or you're on the right
Right.
track. And it's always that you once get into a particular domain, a particular direction, then you start working on it, and you then realize that that this is probably the correct field that you want to go to. Then again, PwC happened. It was a consulting domain. I was always into two minds whether to pursue something on the lines of consulting or on the lines of finance, but I did not have a good exposure to finance. Consulting also, although I was in PwC, but that was not a proper front-end consulting role. It was a proper development role. I had a few talks with the manager, but it didn't work out as to what my desires was. So then I decided to pursue an MBA, proper full-fledged MBA course, and was fortunate enough to get admitted to IIM K. And that is how things have been after that. Yes, thanks.
All right. So we'll go on to the exam procedure and the preparation process later. But before that, I would ask both of y'all that what does business study actually include? Like, what is the domain and what particularly does business studies endorse skill in?
I remember you can go ahead with first.
Yeah, so it's a very open-ended question, and I'm glad that this has come up because what you see or what you feel for an MBA is actually very different when you actually step into a B school. So it's a very case based and a very relevant experience, and it's nothing that you have to study subjects. I believe you have to imply them practically. And coming into specific, I think it depends on institute to institute. XLRI might have a very different curriculum as compared to, say, NIM A, B, C, LIK, or whatever the B school you might take in. Specifically talking about IMK, I think the first year is pretty much common. You get to study a lot of subjects, all from the fields of accounts, finance, marketing, OB, HR. You get to study law subjects as well. So the idea is basically to inculcate that sense of business belongingness into you, so that whatever things you read about in the newspaper are no longer alien to you, right? You get the basic intricacies of how the companies are working. Not even that, I think that is also a too far-fetched thing, but you get a basic thing of developing your mind as to how things will work. You start thinking in those directions. A very simple thing when you talk about marketing. So we have a subject in the field of marketing of financial services where you actually get to know that how difficult it is to market financial services. So how you have to think from a consumer's point of view. So that is one thing. And talking about subjects like accounts and finance, so you get to know that how you need to look at things from very different perspectives. When I studied accounts at fourth year during my eighth semester, it was a simple subject to me. But now I get to know that what numbers do I have to look at if I have to analyze a balance sheet, or if I have to analyze a profit and loss statement, as to think how do I evaluate a company. So I think it's more of an analytical perspective that generates during your first year. Second year is more about the electives that you choose. You might choose anything from a strategy point of view, or from an OBH, or from a supply chain point of view. Depends on what kind of internships you've done. So I think it entails more about developing that thought process into you as to what you want to do, as to what you need to think when you get into the actual field. And I think that is also one important thing as to why I believe that it is very important to have a proper work experience of about, say, 1.5 years before joining a B school, so that you get to know the difference as to what an MBA might have done to you if you hadn't pursued a proper work experience.
I think Aryaman explained it quite well. But again, when it comes to XLRI, there are two programs, BM and HRM. So BM, it's like business management, and HRM stands for human resource management. Even in BM, as pretty much Aryaman told, you'll have the subjects of all the lines, and you'll study across operations subjects, strategy subjects, marketing subjects, finance subjects, and even HR subjects. Same in HR as well, but in HR you'll have more of HR related subjects like OB subjects. You'll be having more of the organizational behavior subjects, and you'll be having more of the law subjects, where we're expected to know about how these things perform, particularly in the industry. But again, second year, when it comes to second year, you can choose your electives. When it comes to an HRM, you can choose mostly the electives in HR domain. So that is pretty much about it. But again, apart from the academics, it is also about the case competitions that you take part in the MBA, during MBA, and also the agility that MBA demands. Because in the midnight itself, something might come up, and the deadline would be the next day itself. So that is something you always have to be on your feet. So that is what MBA teaches you, more than the academics or more than the CGPA that you would probably get in MBA, which matters a lot during undergraduate. But when it comes to postgraduate in MBA, what matters more is how much agile are you, and how much upfront are you in taking up responsibilities that's coming on your way without you even knowing that it would come in the next moment. So yeah,
Right.
so this is my take on that.
Exactly. I mean, very well covered. I think that this is one of the most important things that you get to learn over here. I mean, the way you bond with your peers and the things that you learn. And I mean, everything else comes apart from that of academics. The academics are the last thing I believe that have come to me over here, quite contrary to what I was in Shibur. So, I mean, yes, you do case comps. I think the actual learning comes from what you do exactly in the case comps. When you see what the problem statement is, you get to implement what you all will learn. Yes, exactly.
True, and the sense of belongingness, that sense of bonding, it comes from IST also. I mean, when we studied in most of the engineering colleges, what happens is that sense of bonding might not be there. But when it comes to BESU or IST, we always have a culture, we have a legacy, we have seniors, we have juniors whom we bond with a lot. So I think that is an extension of it in MBA. So I don't think someone who is coming from IST to a MBA background would feel alienated or feel very different
Yes.
about what this culture is about, because we already had that culture in IST Shipur.
That's great. That's Great intel on that. Now, as Aryaman mentioned, you mentioned that people with like 1 or 2 work years of work experience, they get to understand how the MBA was a requirement to them before that. So, would you suggest that having a prior work experience is beneficial?
First of all, I'd like to say that the views that I or we express are completely personal. You might
Right.
take in what all you find relevant. You might find the entire session rubbish, but try to take in as much as you can. So it's more about getting to know what exactly you will be expected to do post your MBA. That is the entire thing, right? So it's beneficial from two perspectives. If you look at the entrance examination point of view, you get bonus points for your work ex, and it all depends on institute to institute what all marks do they allocate for a particular duration of work ex. Some colleges like say I am Lucknow and I am Bangalore give a heavy weightage to your work experience, and that is one thing that students do look at. But the more hedonistic thing is that it actually gives you a different perspective as compared to freshers. Freshers have their own advantage while it comes to pursuing an MBA, and you get to know all this when you enter a college. So there are different domains, right? Marketing, operations, etc. So I believe that different firms for different profiles prefer people with different work experience. That is an unsaid truth in MBA colleges. So I believe my personal opinion is to always have some amount of work experience so that you get to know the difference, the tangible difference that an MBA creates within you as a person, also in
Right.
terms of the skill sets that you gain, right? Someone raw out of an engineering school would not be expected to do things or stuff that an MBA graduate will be expected to do. There are a lot of responsibilities that you shoulder as an MBA, and that is when you realize when you have done the work expert and then you are pursuing an MBA. So more from a skill set point of view, you see a raw engineering graduate, nothing taking away from them, will be expected to do something which he has learned over a period of 4 years. And in my case, as a PwC consultant, I was expected to perform an activity that I learned over a period of say 2 months. Right. I did them whatever justice I could do. But after that, after pursuing an MBA, I have an added skill set of over 2 years which contributes significantly within me. So that is one thing. So you get a chance to test yourself as well as to which domain you might be good at, you might not be good at. With your work experience, if you had say good people around you, you can always venture out into different fields, try out different fields, and then decide, okay, I want to pursue an MBA in this, and probably try to specialize in that particular domain. So taking the maximum out of whatever you do in a work experience is what I believe in. So that is why I said that it is always good to have say about 0, 1, 2, or say 2.5 years of work experience before pursuing an MBA. Nothing taking away from freshers, they always have their own advantages. They always have a fresh mindset as regards to say consulting or marketing jobs. But as far as I'm concerned, I would always suggest people to have some work experience. But again, it affects the kind of preparation that you can have as a fresher. I mean, the preparation, the mindset with which you give cat is entirely different when you give cat with an amount of work experience. I think that frustration level creeps in, and there are different things that me and Himanshu would probably know. So yes, I believe that it's important to have a bit of work experience. So only for your hedonistic purposes, nothing else. I mean, also it contributes, as I said, to the brownie points that you gain in terms of your admission process.
um, while I agree to Aryaman, the last part that he spoke about is the most crucial one, which is like it completely depends upon the preparation strategy what goes on after 1 year. So I mean, to all the freshers who are listening to this, it is also okay if you come as a fresher to a MBA or a B school. You Yes, as Aryaman told, you may not be having that relevant skill set or certain amount of corporate experience which might be required in certain cases, but again, think it also from the point of view that after going into the corporates, you do not know how your work style would be, your work life balance would be. It may be that you try and I have numerous cases of so many people who have been trying out for a couple of years and they have given up after that because they couldn't really make through the cat or zat or whatever MBA entrances there are because of the kind of workplaces that they hired during their job. And not everyone can afford to resign from the job and then give a year back or whatever you can for the preparation strategy.
Right.
So if you can prepare in the final year, if you can take the cat or zat or whatever management entrance you can, and if you succeed through it, then I don't think you should think back and prepare for a, extend it for a year more, because that is where I slightly differ from Aryaman. Because first thing, as I told, it would depend upon whether you will be able to prepare with so much enthusiasm in the later years or not. Secondly, also you will have a fresh mindset. I mean, it's nothing wrong to come with a open mindset, because marketing companies, particularly in the sales domain, they are very much welcoming into students who come from who are freshers. So I think that is one point that you can take into consideration. So it's okay if you have work if you do not have work, as long as you are able to nail any of the examinations and you are able to get through the interviews, then I don't think you should take a year back or think for the next year, because you never know, you might succeed better in a better way, or you may
Right.
even fail. So that's always a chance in that.
Right. So now we'll take on the questions about the preparation process and the interviews. Now, the first question is: B schools taken a lot of like they accept scores from various exams like CAT, ZAT, and I guess GMAT. So, like, could you throw light upon how these exams differ from one another and what opportunity each one has to offer?
Himanshu, that you going first?
Yeah, no problem. I'll just take up the ZAT part particularly,
Yeah.
because I
Yeah,
think
yeah, sure.
Aryaman is the best person to talk about CAT. But when it comes to the preparation phase, you asked about the preparation phase, right?
Right.
So for the preparation phase, I believe it's more or less the same. What differs is how for the last 1 or 2 months prepare differently for the other entrance examinations other than CAT. But if you are preparing seriously for CAT, then I think you will cover up most of the examinations. For me, actually, if you ask me, I followed a couple of sources. Am I allowed to name them in case?
Yeah, 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 sure.
I'm asking you, Swanila. So I think for VIRC, I refer to VIRC. For quant specifically, I didn't do anything except for the mocks that I used to take, sectional
I'm
mocks of.
sorry to interrupt. Sorry to interrupt, Himanshu, but I guess your voice lagged when you were speaking about your source for VLC. So could you just
All right,
repeat?
all right. I hope I'm audible right now.
Yeah, yeah,
So
right now.
when it comes to, I'll just go section wise. For VISC, I chose to study from VISC 1000 by Jijuvasan. I mean, he runs a good course over there. And again, these are the things that I'm mentioning other than the mocks that you have to take. Of course, you have to take mocks, you have to analyze that. That goes needlessly without saying. But when
Right.
it comes to quants, I didn't study as such for quants, except for the fact that I watched a couple of YouTube videos of Rodha. I think Rodha YouTube channel is there from Ravi Prakash, I believe. So he teaches over there for quants and DILR. So we followed a couple of videos from there, and mostly what I did was I prepared. I took a lot of mocks and I analyzed them how it was. For that, how it is different is you'll have to prepare for the DM section, which is the decision making section. Why it is very important is because ultimately when you're coming to the B school, even then you will have to take a lot of decisions on the foot. And even after your MBA, when you are going to be a manager, you are supposed to take a lot of decisions, given the fact that there will be a lot of information asymmetry in the market. You will not be having all the information with you, and you will have to take decisions about whatever information you have. So for the decision making section, I would suggest that first go through the last 10 years question papers and how what the answers are. Think about where you are going probably wrong, and then take as many mocks as possible, particularly from for me it worked for time and IMS I preferred, because their question papers were very much similar to what the actual question paper was. uh, I think that is all that I did differently for that. Apart from that, for the other MBA entrance examinations like SNAP and MAT or other examinations, you can probably see for a last couple of days before how the question paper differs. But more or less, if you are preparing seriously for CAT, it will mostly cover all the exams as such.
Yeah, so I gave three exams. I gave CAT, ZAT, and IFT, and I believe I had decent scores in all of them. So what I took away from the exams was that it depends on your strengths and weaknesses. So the quickly you're able to gauge your strengths and weaknesses, the better you'll be able to perform at the end. So for CAT, I always knew that I had a decent level of quants and an idea aptitude, but I knew that I was always lacking with my VRC preparations. So I started with my VRC preparations in the month of say February or March. Although it was a very raw preparation phase, but I think that helped me a lot in the end. It is very important to be consistent. You will give a lot of mocks. So you give about 50 to 60 mocks. In those 50 to 60 mocks, you might not do well in 40 mocks, but it's a very iterative process. You take in the smallest of things and you try to improve it in the next mock. Very honestly, my preparation relied entirely on mocks. I did not consult any coaching institute. I took mocks of two institutes, Time and IMS, and both of them were very different in the kind of questions they framed or the difficulty level that they had. Starting with my preparation phase, as I mentioned, I started in the month of March, and it was March 2020. So the COVID pandemic had just hit, and I don't know if I should say this, but that came as a kind of boon for me because you were restricted to your homes and don't have to travel to
Right.
office. So I tried to utilize all of that stuff into my preparatory phase. VRC was to address to answer VRC questions. I really could not understand as to what should I mark. I understood something else of the passage and it meant something else. And in that also there are different kind of passages, like the different genres. It might be from the field of psychology or from the field of science or mathematics, etc. It's very important to analyze as to which part or which sort of RCs are you good at. I knew that I was never good at philosophical or psychological RCs because they actually require a very deep sense of understanding, which I believe that I did not have at that point of time. So to improve that, you have to read a lot. You actually have to read a lot. I mean, whatever I searched on net, how to improve VRC, everyone mentioned read a lot. So I found that, I mean, is it that easy, or are they stating a very redundant thing? But I went with that because I did not have any coaching or anyone else to guide me, but that actually helped. Apart from that, for quants and LIDA was entirely based on a mock preparations. Try to solve as many sets as you can. Try to go through all the past year papers. There are some YouTube channels as well. I mean, Elite Grid is there, then two, three or more are there. So, I mean, you can go through the playlist that these channels have. So, more or less, they try to cover a lot of sets. And the other thing is that you can always, since you would be, I mean, every aspirant, subscribes to a particular coaching institute for mock. So they have their old mock papers as well. Try to get hold of those mock papers. Try to solve all the VRC and the LIDI questions. So automatically you'll develop that knack of solving questions. So LIDI you have to do in two parts. The first part is just the set solving, so that you get a hinge or get a touch as to how you need to think. And the second part is solving that set in a particular time frame, and that is the most important thing. CAT 2020 had a very difficult LID, I believe. I think all the three sets were difficult, and set, not set, the slots, right? And slot three, they said was the most difficult. I was fortunate to get that, although it depended entirely on how you remained cool at that point of time. I think I messed up on that, but still scored up decent. So, what helps is all the previous preparation that you have done over that period of time. So BRC and idea you have to get covered basis on the practice that you do. It can
Right.
be on the basis of the past mocks that you've solved, the old question papers, etc. And quants is something that I believe comes naturally to people, not people actually, to engineers. But even if it is not the case, try to pick up. Say if there are 30 topics in quants, 15 topics would be very easy, and like for example, quadrilaterals or triangles or topics like these, which are quite easy as compared to others. Maybe say probability or PNC. So try to pick up the easy topics. Whenever you start the paper, always brush through or always go through the questions once, so that you know which questions to pick up first and solve, so that you have a base score.
Right.
People generally, what mistake that they do is that once the question paper starts, they start solving the questions one by one, what I know. So it's always important to go through all the questions, all the sets, all the RCs, pick up the ones that you know you will definitely bang on correct. They make your base score and then probably maximize on the other aspects. Coming to that, I think Himanshu had covered up everything else. But what I like about that is a very, like, ZAT is a better paper as compared to CAT. You'll always enjoy giving a ZAT mock as compared to a CAT mock. because I think they don't have a time limit, right? Per section, they don't have a time limit, right, Himanshu? So
Yeah, they
that
don't
is
have.
something that plays in the favor of the candidates, the students. The decision making section is very interesting. I mean, you really like solving the questions. It actually challenges you on a different level, on a different scale. Apart from that, I think they don't have a LRDS section. Most of the people fear the LRDS section, so not having an LRDS section always helps. And this thing with VRC is that there is always a crunch of time. So since in that there is no time limit, you can actually give more amount of time to say VRC, and the quali section is the one where you save time. So it's a very even game for the students. And when you start enjoy, when you enjoy giving the paper, it always plays up in the benefits of students. That is what I like about that. IFT is very much similar on the lines of CAT, although they have, I think, the GK section as well, which you can easily cover if you're regularly reading the newspaper. Nothing new in that. They have a very, I think they don't have a very good interface, so that is something that they can actually work on. So yes, that's about how you prepare for CAT and SAT. A very personalized process. Nothing that what I say would work for you, what Himanshu says would work for you. Uh, Pick up what your strengths and weaknesses are, and then probably work on that.
All right. So the next question about the preparatory process is how early should we start preparing? As in that, what's the time duration for covering the whole syllabus?
So, I think already some part of that I covered. So it's you need to know into how much water you are in before getting into the process. What I believe is that before putting the final 4 to 5 months of the most crucial aspect of your preparation, try to have a brief background as to what the examination demands, right? So for that before 1 year period, I mean the warm up phase you can call it, try to read some books, try to solve puzzles, sudokus, etc. Try to go through mathematical concepts. So this period of 1 year is not your preparatory phase. This is your warm up phase. You are functioning or tuning in your mind for the exam, right? And then you put in the final accelerator for the say last 4 to 5 months, where you start solving in mocks. You religiously pick up each and every topic. You religiously pick up each and every subject of like topic of RC. You read that passage and then you solve the questions accordingly. I think if you prepare religiously, leaving aside the 8 to 9 period of the warm up phase, I think a 5 to 6 month period is sufficient for CAT. For it, and again it depends on what kind of student you are. If you are a fresher, then 5 to 6 months would do perfectly fine. For work experience, for people currently working or who would want to pursue CAT after a work experience, take in 1 to 2 months extra, because you never know as to what your final month would look like. I mean, it entirely depends upon your the client that you're working for, or the work kind of work environment that you have. So prepare accordingly. But the thing is, I think the last 20 days have a lot of impact. I mean, the kind of mocks that you're going through, there might be phases when you don't do well in say 2 or 3 continuous mocks. So that pushes you so that entirely derails you. So it's very important to have a very strong mentality at that point of time. Having said all that, I think 4 to 5 months of religious preparation is more than enough for CAT. So you can start from say April or May. That is the phase when things are pretty light in terms of, I think, everything, for even for freshers or even for people having work experience. Yes, Manchuda.
I think Aryaman has already covered most of it. Like it completely depends upon how you have already been prepared till now, because it's. I would like to differ a little. Like even if you are an engineer, doesn't really mean that you need to be good at quants. There are many people I know who struggled in quants and in fact were very good at VIRC or vice versa, as it
Yeah.
is. So see what your strengths are, and then whatever you are lagging, try to prepare for it at least a year before the actual exam. Even if you are in third year and you are watching this, this is also a good time to prepare for you. I mean, because even if you have more than a year left for that exam, you can still go for a warm up, as Aryaman told. You can see a little bit of mocks, you can see a little bit of videos. Right now there are a lot of videos and all available online, so you can see how people are preparing and all. But be sure that whatever sources you are referring, so limit the number of sources also, because there are a lot of information right now. So
Right.
elite grade hai tumhara, iQuanta hai, and there are a lot of new age YouTubers also coming up every day, every now and then. So you need to be very conscious about what you are choosing, because the more the number of things you choose, the less information you would ultimately capture in your head. So be a little slow in your process, but start it as early as possible, because there's no right time to start as such. But as Aryaman told, last 20-30 days, it's also important that how you frame your mocks, how you take your mocks. And I remember before the ZAT exam, before 1 month of the ZAT exam, I had made a schedule in Excel, like what all mocks I'll be taking on which days, what all topics I'll prepare on which days, how much have I covered. At the end of the day, I kept a track of how much have I covered of those that I had thought of accomplishing, and what all are there that's left for the next day to cover. So I had a gradual plan of doing what I am supposed to do before the JAT exams. And even for the CAT, you can do a same. I didn't do it for CAT, unfortunately, but I would suggest that everyone should maintain an Excel sheet if possible, so that you get a hunch of what things are left for you to cover, and you don't miss out on any part. And take your mocks, and also you know uh, what do you call it as, analyze the mocks as seriously as possible, because people leave out on the analysis part. But I would say, even if you take 5 mocks less, that's okay, but keep on analyzing the mocks on the questions that you are taking, so that it will help you to retain some of the knowledge that you have newly gained through the questions.
So on a very personal front, a cat mock on the basis on the recent trend, it is a 2 hour paper. But
Right.
I used to take 3 days to analyze the mock, and 3 days would mean around like 18 hours. I think 18 hours I used to put in for analyzing a particular mock. Each and every question you solve, you think a different perspective as to how you could have done it in a better manner. Each and every RC you go through twice or thrice, it improves your reading abilities as well. So it's always very important, as Himanshu stated, mock analysis is actually the most important thing that will actually differentiate you from the other competitors out there.
And even if you are not very confident about taking the full length mocks, take sectional mocks. Otherwise take topic mocks, whatever it suits you. It's not necessarily that in our neighborhood 𝗙𝗲𝗃 or it becomes difficult for you to sit at a stretch for whatever commitments you have, then it's okay. Even if you take short mocks, it's okay, but then keep on solving questions. That the whole idea is.
All right. And for someone who is aiming for an MBA degree from a foreign university, what extra should they put to their preparation process?
I don't think I can value add to
Yeah, I
this
think
question. I'm sorry,
we
I
would
don't think
probably
I'll.
not be the
Yeah.
right people to answer this question. Maybe we can connect you with people who would answer this question in a very wise manner. So, but I think that we are not the right people to answer this at this moment of time.
I agree to Aryaman on this.
Okay. And now, like we uh, we know that cats B schools do give a weightage to previous scores, like your graduation course scores, and I think school level scores. So what suggestion would you want to give to someone who is not, like, who has not fared well previously?
From my end, Aryaman, I'm going first if it's okay. I think I mean, for when it comes to ZAT or XLRI, it's okay if you have not fared well in your curriculum. I know a friend of mine who, I mean, worked at Starbucks, had a 59 percentage in class 10th, but he's still over here with me. But you are supposed to validate or rationalize about why you have to justify basically why your scores were less, and after that how, and what all things have you done to compensate that. It cannot be like, I have been a bad student throughout and I'm still a bad student, I have not done anything apart from the curriculum as well, and then you should take they should take. So that will be a very hard part for you to justify otherwise. But as long as you have a valid reason about why probably you couldn't do well in your academics, but you have done a lot of additional things to compensate for it, then I think you are okay to go with the interviews. What interviewers would probably look for, particularly from XLRI point of view, I'm not talking from other schools, but what XLRI particularly the professors look in for in the candidate is firstly the ethicality and the moral mindset that you come with, and secondly how confident and practical are you as a person about whatever you are telling. As long as you are able to defend your answers, and as long as you are able to tell what didn't work for you at that point in time, you are good to go in the interview. So that will be my take on this.
Yeah, pretty much bang on Himanshu. I think so. XLRI has a very different process. So For IIMs, as I mentioned, it's a very Indianized system. I mean, they give weightage to irrelevant, not irrelevant, but they have their own, they have their own backing as to why they would prefer a 10th score or a 12th score or a graduation score. But this year, I think IIM Ahmedabad had let out the graduation scores, if I'm correct. So the thing is that you need to figure out as to which college gives how much weightage to your 10th, 12th, and graduation.
And I
So
think the weightage also varies from college to
yeah,
college.
exactly. So, for example, IIM Indore has a humongous 74% weightage on your 10th and 12th. So, that practically leaves your CAT score irrelevant, right?
Correct.
So, and that 10th and 12th has to be very good. You have to have a 10 CG from a CBSE board perspective, you have to have a 10 CGPA and a percentage of above 74.6, 94.6. I'm sorry, 94.6. Apart from that, you need to have a CAT percentile of 99 around in order to get a call from IIM Indore. If you have a percentage of say 97, then you get an IIM Indore call at 95 percentile. See, so that's the weightage that they have given to CAT, and it differs to each and every college. So what different? For example, IIM Bangalore also gives the weightage, but it has a certain set allotted to the work experience part. So you need to assess your profile, and then you need to match it with a particular B school with which you have the best chance, right? A very small example stated as I stated, Bangalore and Lucknow have a huge weightage for work experience. Ahmedabad, Calcutta is one college amongst the IIMs. I think Calcutta, Kozhikode also gives some weightage to work experience, but Calcutta is one of the best B schools that does not give a huge weightage to your past 10th and 12th scores. So, which automatically means that not having good 10th and 12th scores should not hinder your preparations in any manner. People scoring above 99 point from a general engineering male candidate's perspective, people scoring north of say 99.67 percentile get a call from IIM Calcutta. So what I intend to say is that your past academics should not be any hindrance to what you want to prepare. I mean, people after appearing for CAT might give it as an excuse that I don't have a good 10th or 12th score, so that is irrelevant. That is not the thing that you should do. Always your motivation solely should be to maximize your score, because you never know which college changes its criteria when. Right? So
Right.
next time Calcutta might include your 10th and 12th scores. From IMK's perspective, we have a very decent weightage that is given to 10th and 12th. Apart from that, I think the college gives a weightage to the kind of certifications or the professional certifications in terms of CA, CF, or FRM that you might have pursued. So it depends on college to college, and it is nothing that, it should not affect your preparation in any manner. I think I agree that it is a very blunt thing to say. There is always this thing will always be running at the back of your mind. Ki I have say a particular 10, 12 score, but you know, it will ultimately backfire. I mean, it will deviate you from the focus of doing well in your CAT. So leave it to everything, like just leave that thing and focus on your preparation. Okay, you might say ki it's a very impractical thing to say, but that is how things should work. A very good CAT score will fetch you amazing calls. I mean, you can get calls from FMS Delhi, XLRI, Jamshedpur, IIM Calcutta. These are the colleges, which actually give very less weightage to your previous scores. So nothing as such ki your 10th and 12th, although it will hamper a bit. And I mean, it hits you when you don't get certain calls based on your past academics, but
Hmm.
this is not something that you should be bothered about right now. Just focus on the preparation part, just focus on the mocks, just focus on improving, and focus on getting a very good percentile right now.
All right. And for someone who is pursuing an MBA degree already, what potential avenues do they have after their MBA degree? Like
Yeah.
in which
So.
domain?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I would particularly talk about HRM first because I'm pursuing that. So, and after that, I would go for probably BM course of in XLRI. First thing, in HRM, the zenith of the career position that you can probably reach is a CHRO position, right? Of course, the CXOs are the head of the organization that you work for, and CHROs are the head of the human resource management that people have. But if you are asking about right after the B school, that what career opportunities are probably there, you can have career opportunities in multiple domains. You can have career opportunities in financial institutes. You can, like for example, financial organization, for example, the banking sector, or for example, the insurance sector. You can also have your FMCGs, which comes to the campus to hire people. You can FMCG is fast moving consumer goods, just in case you do not know. And then you have sectors like the conglomerates as in who have multiple businesses across the line. For example, HUL is one of them, ABG is another, Reliance Industries, and of course you have the most coveted ones, the consulting the companies, which comes to the campus, where you can also expect to become a management consultant. Because if at XLRI, or even I believe in IMK and other colleges also, when it comes to the consulting roles, they don't really distinguish between the profile that you have. For example, even if you are in one specific vertical, like Aryaman is in finance and I am in HRM, but they don't distinguish between that. They shortlist your CV based on your past academics and your past performances, after which you are up for the interview round, post which your performance depend defines how you proceed to the uh, company. So I think there are multiple openings, there are multiple roles for BM specifically. If I come, there are marketing roles, as I told, again in the same industries, in the industries of conglomerates, or FMCGs, or financial companies, or the consulting companies, which where a person who has a BM degree can actually go for. So there are a lot of opportunities post MBA, and in these all domains. Araman, if you can add something.
Yeah, so for someone already pursuing an MBA, I think some part of his career would already have been sorted out. But again, talking from a perspective of, say, a finance student, uh, so finance is basically not pure finance, it is finance and accounting. And then you get to know the different streams that you can venture out into. It depends on college to college as to what companies come for what profiles. So speaking about the top B schools, you have companies who come for the front end, middle office, and the back end investment banking roles. Similar in the corporate banking division, we have again we have companies coming in the private equity and uh, venture capital division of it. We have companies coming from the portfolio. So these terms might sound at this point of time, if I was sitting across the panel, like, these terms do sound very, I mean, very vague right now. So these are the different domains of finance. So I think so finance as specialization, you once you step into this, you get to know what are the different kinds, right? So very simple would be what students understand is that of this role of a corporate banker, or say role of an investment banker, where you're expected to raise funds for different clients which come to you, or you are expected to act as a banker to the different corporates which come to you in order to help them raise the funds that they need. Private equity venture capitalism is that when you source different startups, you source them, you fund them, you gauge the future valuations of these startups. And portfolio management is something when you are expected to manage the entire portfolio of the client in terms of the gains or the risks that he is wanting to take in the short term or long term period of time. Again, as Himanshu mentioned, consulting jobs are considered to be one of the most coveted. So the preparation phase for these is also very different. You're expected to solve cases. You're expected to go through guesstimates. You need to have a very holistic understanding of probably all the industries that exist out there. Because as a consultant, what they mention is that you're expected to solve problems, and when they mean that solve problems, actually mean that you can be thrown into anything, and then you are expected to you know have a broad understanding of that sector and maybe proceed with as to what solution would you give. Then you have sales and marketing roles, where it actually depends on the kind of firm that uh, you you are attached with. For example, ITC, when it comes from sales, or you can expect yourself selling cigarettes at any of the stores or outlets out there. So it's a very broad field that one can venture out into. It depends on what your past profile has been, what you want to go into, and how you have shaped up your profile. For example, when you sit for the summer internship processes, your CV gets shortlisted on the basis of what you have done. So I might have some marketing relevant experience, say any life project that I might have done, or any small internship that might have done, which will actually help me getting a shortlist for a marketing firm. And that might not work for a consulting firm, right? So a
Right.
brief mindset needs to be there as to in which domain do I want to venture out into. Again, each and every stream has their own academic requirements as well. Specifically for finance and consulting, you are expected to have good academic scores, and I think that is one area where academic scores actually have a big role to play, and that is when things are not in your hand. It's always on the past academics that you've done. These firms also shortlist you basis on the kind of college that you've graduated from. Fortunately, we are amongst, like, our institute is considered to be one of the top colleges, so we don't have problems getting shortlisted from these colleges. Uh, Very blunt, we're not sugarcoating anything over here. So I think the kind of shortlist that you have depends a lot on the profile that you have made. And this is one thing that I want to tell all the viewers or all the listeners, that start thinking in that direction. I mean, start knowing yourself as to will you be a good consultant? Will you be would you enjoy yourself in that role? Do some live projects for marketing. I think consulting is a very difficult thing to get. Do a small certification on finance so that you get to know do you have that skill set. And once the earlier you get into this, then you can step into a major or a broader thing where you can start profiling yourself in order to get a particular shortlist. Yes.
And like, just a small addition to what Arman has told, even during a preparation phase, have a mindset about which companies or which domain you would probably target post
Aiming
MBA.
for.
You
Right.
need not really have to be hell bent on that, because you never really know where you'll end up in the summer internship processes when you come to the B school. But you always have to have a little bit of idea about what interests you a lot. And how would you know about that? Either of two ways. One thing, you go to YouTube, you go to internet, you go to Google, you search about what the roles are and how you see how much you are able to relate to it. Secondly, the most important, most essential, or but yet difficult, is if you have some hands-on experience on that, which is difficult. But if you have certain hands-on experience on HR domain or marketing domain, or as Aryaman told, if you take a certain of light projects or something of that sort, or even if you do some amount of courses online, then you'll have a little bit of idea about how the things should be in the B school, or how what roles are expected out of it. So
Right.
then only you can make a conscious decision about what you are probably more fit into, rather than you making yourself a force fit into everything and anything that comes in your way. I think that doesn't really work. If you are simultaneously preparing for CAT and GET, it might work. You are a brilliant student, you crack both the exams, but in the long run, it doesn't really make much of a sense, because you are, as a person, not really sure about what you are trying to do. So, I mean, if you are really clear about what you want to do and then focus hard on that, I think that will make a much more difference than you trying to shoot everything that's in the bush.
Just
Right.
one more thing, a very small thing, if I may just add. So I molded my work experience in a way that it benefited me in different domains. So when I was asked for a consulting CV, I emphasized on the consulting part that I had done. When I was asked for a finance CV, I molded in a way that I had actually worked for some financial clients, which I had done. So it is very important. So that, like, that's the work experience part that can actually help you with this. So you mold your work experience such a way in order to help it boost your CV as well.
To meet that particular criteria.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
Right. All right. So I think this was all the questions from our end, and I think it's been a pretty exhaustive session. We've covered more or less all the probable questions. Now we are open to the forum. We will be taking questions from our listeners. So one by one, we can address the questions. The first question is from Anurag. He says, as per your experience, what is the best time to prepare for CAT? I think we've covered this. Um, the next question, please. Someone is asking the comparison between ZAT and CAT syllabus.
I think 95% would be same except for adding the decision making section. So once you prepare for CAT, I think you've already covered yourself for ZAT. Think it in such a manner that for ZAT you have about 20 days to prepare. So nothing new that you can do. Just the exam mindset and the exam timing and all is different. So get acquainted to the aspect of writing a stat exam, prepare diligently for the decision making sector section, and once you've prepared for CAT, I think you're pretty much good to go for ZAT as well. Nothing new. I think there might be 4 or 5 topics in quant section. For example, I think ZAT includes poems as well, right, Himanshu? So might
Yeah,
you
yeah.
might want to practice
You
them as
know,
well.
I mean, if you can practice a couple of poems, that's fine. Otherwise, if you take mocks, it will simultaneously come in your way. You know how, and the questions are not very hard as long as you are able to get a hunch of what's in the poem. So they don't really ask you about a poetic view, such as such. But they want to know if you are well versed about reading a poem and then getting the insights about what the poem is. And one more thing, CAT, as I believe right now is a 2 year test. I mean,
Yeah.
2 hour test.
Two
But
hours,
when it
yeah.
comes to that, it's a 3 hour test. So try to take the mocks accordingly, because right now we are so much distracted with the social media and stuff, is that getting concentrated for 3 hours is a little difficult. So try to, for example, if your ZAT exam takes place at 12 p.m. in the afternoon, try to take mocks at similar time, so
Exactly.
that your body is acquainted about you concentrating at that point. You don't have breaks, water breaks, or you don't have food breaks, or any other breaks as such, so that you are able to focus on what's going on. Because if you utilize 3 hours for that particularly, then I think it is more than enough for the paper, for you to solve the paper. Because if you see on the preparation strategy, you don't have to solve the entire paper, right? Even 12 questions from each sections with all 12 correct is also a big shot for that. So I think just the same advice, that if in case you are taking the mocks at the time when you actually have the ZAT, then it will be a more helpful. And the same
I
thing
think
goes even for CAT.
the better way to put this question would be the syllabus would be same, but the pattern of questions will differ, right? So the pattern will differ, and for that you'll have to write a lot of mocks. Simple.
Right. Okay, now moving on to the next question. Purbayan is asking, how does extra curriculum affect IIM or XLRI admission?
Can you please repeat the question? Extracurricular,
How
right? I think
extracurricular?
that would impact more or less all your interviews that you take, because you'll have certain add-on points to talk about. For example, if you have done a certain social project or social activity which is different from what others have done, but I understand that in the times of COVID you have probably not visited the campus much, but it will be difficult, and it might be difficult for you to actually go and talk about things. But still try to figure out your ways. Try to see if you can actually talk about points which are other than the academic part. So the more the number of extracurricular activities you have in your points, the better you can drive the interview to those sections, and it would probably be better for you to talk about it.
Yeah, pretty much similar. I think you have to distinguish yourself from the other candidates out there, and I think extracurriculars are one of the most important factors out there. On a personal level, I'm very much thankful to Himanshu. I think 75% of my extracurriculars are because of him. The projects or whatever, the position of responsibilities that I've undertaken, which actually helped me a lot. It also depends on the quality of extracurriculars that you have. Participation or things like that don't actually help unless and until you have actually brought out something tangible, or something you've reached a level out there. So these are things which help the interviewer gauge your candidature or your abilities. So yes, it helps a lot. Actually helps a lot. So gives a very all round perspective or a very all round image of you,
Right.
which the interviewer wants a candidate to be who comes into his college, right? So focus on the extracurriculars a lot. And for people not having, say, good academic scores, past academic scores, these are the things that will actually save you during your admission processes.
Right. Okay, now moving on to the next question. Someone is asking about the interview process of IIMs.
Interview processes. Okay. So
Like, you could share with us your personal experience as well. Like, how did you go through the entire interview process?
So I'll cover the interview process of a general good top B school rather than say an IIM.
Yeah.
That will make it more exhaustive. So you're expected to know about the college. So what I did before any interview was that I made sure to go through the website as to what the college was good for, what the alumni were doing and all. So it gives you a good idea as to how you should frame your answers, right? For example, when I was sitting for my IMK interview, I knew that the college was well known for its finance and accounting faculties, and it had published a lot of research papers in that field. So I automatically framed my answers in that domain. Uh, these B schools generally start off with a small, brief introduction about yourself, where you are expected. I personally believe that you're expected to create a lot of impact over there, and this can actually drive your interview henceforth in a forward in your favorable direction. They generally ask you a lot about your work experience as to what your role was. They won't leave you over there. Then they would, venture out deep into it, asking what exactly was your role, what difference did you create, why do you want to actually pursue an MBA, and that convincing part becomes very difficult after a point of time, because each and every candidate will have a more or less similar story. So you have to pick up specific points which will actually differentiate you from the other candidates. Then
Right.
after that, I think it is very important to remain relevant. You need to read a lot of current affairs, and it's not about knowing the news. It's more about the impact that will be creating in the business sector. For example, we have the Russia-Ukraine crisis and all going on. So how are Indian businesses being affected? What is the effect on the Indian stock market? Why are banks behaving in a certain way? So these are the things that you should know. Apart from that, I think focus on your hobbies, and sometimes the interview might be a very stress interview. I think in my IIT Bombay and my IMK interview, I was asked to give a speech. The question in my IMK interview was that, suppose you win the Grand Slam, you win the Australian Open, then what speech would you give? So I was expected to give a 1 to 1.5 minute speech over there. So it can be a stress interview also. It's very important to not lose your calm. It's like, I think stress interviews work in your favor ultimately if you have your calm and you're able to give out rational answers. Don't blabber unnecessary things. The interviewers do get irritated, and they might just throw you out of the process. So keep your calm, speak rational stuff, know what you're talking about, and I think more or less no need to complicate things in a very unnecessary manner.
All right. Himanshu, would you like to tell us something about your interview at XLRI as well?
Yeah, I think when it comes to XLRI, they would probably like to know you more of as a person. As I told even during one of my answers, that try to frame answers which are morally and ethically correct, because once you talk about something which is ethically wrong, you are completely out of the game. XLRI
Right.
focuses a lot about ethicality. Secondly, they would like to know whatever extracurricular activities or academics or whatever you have mentioned in the answers. They give a kind of SOP sort of questions, 7 8 questions, where you have to write answers to certain those questions, and then you have to give it to them. They have the answer over in front of them. So they will give you situational questions about, tell us about the biggest setback in your life, or talk to us about what you could have probably done different if you were in the similar situation that you were, whatever you have done as a part of co-curricular or such.
Right.
But try to keep the answers as honest as possible, because and there are multiple levels of drilling that they would do. They would not just ask you a question and get the answer and they'll move on, because mostly what they do is they would like to know you as a person more. They would like to see whether you answers, the conviction with which you say, and the honesty with which you represent the answers, whether you have actually done the part that you have talking about, or you have just superficially been a part of it. So I think that is very important in XLRI interview particularly, and even in I believe that is the same with the top IIM interviews as well, where you have to talk with a lot of conviction about whatever you have done. And then there might be questions, when you have to think on the fit over there itself. And it's okay to not have a right answer to that, but as long as you are able to have a rationale behind whatever you are telling, it
Right.
works, because, and as Aryaman told, that there will be a lot of stress interviews with whatever college you go for. There will be a lot of stress interviews, so you'll have to be very much calm and composed during that time, because they would like to test you as a person. Because remember, ultimately after the B schools, you are going to join any of the organizations, you're going to be managers, and there you may not really be having a straight cut answer for your shareholders, or even your subordinates, your juniors, your people who are working under you. But you'll always have to make things work in the favor of you, right? You'll have to make them work for the company or the organization, and they'll have to make things look very good on paper. So they would like to see, how well you are able to frame such points and you are able to tolerate those uh, stress interview part. So I think that is what my suggestion would be, that keep your calm during the interviews.
Right. Okay, now moving on to the next question. Uh, Shuyash Tiwari is asking, what minimum percentile should we target to get into one of the IIMs ABC?
So yes, I think this is not a complete question. I need to, like, not I. Everyone needs to know your profile. Different profiles will have different minimum percentile. Assuming that you are a general engineering male candidate, for IMC you'll require and a fresher as well, because you have mentioned I'm B and I'm A. For IMC you'll require a 99.67 percentile. For IMB, if you have a 2 years work experience, you will require 99.6. For 3 years, you'll require around 99.3 or 99.4. For IMA, you will get a call north of 99.75, I think 99.7, 99.75. So actually need to know your profile, provided you meet the criteria of the 10th and 12th.
All right, thank you. Moving on to the next question is, how difficult it is to get into foreign university for MBA, especially USA? I think like I've addressed this question before and we've got our
It's
answer
actually
on our
quite
right.
easier as compared to getting into a top B school in India. I think so. But again, not the correct persons to answer this question. Maybe we can connect you with people who would give you the a more holistic perspective as to how you should profile yourself.
All right. So I guess that's all regarding the questions we have from the forum. Purvan, do we have any more questions? One second. No, so that was all the questions we had from the forum. I think all our viewers and all our listeners have had most of their queries cleared, and now they have a better clarity about their preparation process and much more enthusiasm and motivation. Thank you, Himanshu and Aryaman, for joining us and sharing very valuable tips and suggestions. It was a really great session. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope we were able to do justice to your Sunday evening. I mean, at a level best. I mean, you can always connect with us personally over Instagram, LinkedIn, etc. It's never a
Yeah,
problem. Always open for
same.
such
Thank you,
things.
thank you so much, Sonila, for having us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So with that, we are concluding today's session. We'll be back soon. EES will be back soon with another edition of Prep Talk. Till then, everyone, I would like to end the session saying thank you and yeah, stay safe, all of you all.